How does the sort of creative process of your songwriting compare to the painting
Mm.
process? Are there any similarities, or what can you tell us about that?
For me, making painting is a much more sort of peaceful process than making music. I always felt like I wrote best with other people,
Hmm.
so I needed other people for that process. And certainly, I really enjoyed playing live, and I really enjoyed making arrangements in the studio. I was interested in production, so and I needed other people for those things. With painting, it's just me. I feel like I'm actually quite a shy person, and I don't do super well in situations where there are lots of other people. So, for me, so far, the painting process has sort of suited me better than the music process.
Hmm. And how about in terms of like audience and like when the work gets out there? And so I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
sort of a when you're I mean, you played in a rock band, and when you go to see live uh, music, there's sort of like a certain experience that sort of happens there between the audience and the
Mm-hmm.
performers. When you go to a gallery to look at paintings, it's a really different dynamic. Is that something you're conscious of when you're making your work, or is it something that you just think about in general? Like,
That's a really interesting question. Lynn Hirschman, who's a San Francisco artist who I love, said to me, making work is like voodoo. It's like making little spells, and the work will draw its audience to it. It's almost like your job is to just find your own kind of way of resonating, and then to make work in that state, and then the work will find its own way out into the world. It's almost like you don't really have to worry too much about that. And I feel like going to a good gig and going to a good show at a gallery isn't really that different. I'm looking to be moved. I'm looking to have my consciousness raised and to experience something transcendent. And that can happen in a room full of a couple thousand people with the band playing, and that can happen when I'm standing in front of a painting.
the other thing that I thought was really interesting about your work is sort of this mix of materials. You kind of mentioned it a
Mm-hmm.
little bit at the beginning that you were working with kind of the fastest materials you could find, stuff
Mm-hmm.
like spray paint, and then the slowest materials like oil
Mm-hmm.
paint. And in the new show, you're introducing some other materials. I saw like plastic tarps listed
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
as one of them. So could you talk a bit about the materials that you use in your work and what attracts you to them, especially to kind of the less conventional things like plastic tarps?
Well, the plastic tarps actually came out of just me using plastic tarps in my studio to protect my walls, which is something that I learned to do when I was studying painting at Naropa. They would have plastic tarps up just to protect the walls from the students' paint. So when I got my own studio, I was doing that. And with the tarps, when you're really just looking at the paint that's been left behind, the drips and the edges around the panels or the canvases, it's just the source. It's just nature. I'm completely out of the way. It's just the materials that I'm choosing to use. So I started to become interested in thinking about the tarps as being actually a painting.
And how about the spray paint and
And the
the
panels and stuff.
and the oils? Yeah, I mean, is was
Yeah,
or were
sure.
those spray paints stuff you used before? Or I mean, that it seems like what, like if you go to study painting, that's maybe not the first thing that they hand you when you walk in the door is a can of spray
Yeah.
paint.
Well, I was interested in using materials that were readily available and cheap. And I come from, I'd say, a background that's always been shaped by the punk aesthetic, by the kind of DIY aesthetic. So, and there's something incredibly satisfying and immediate about spray paint, and there's fantastically icky colors that are so particular to the world we live in. I feel like fluorescents are the big payoff. They have they reflect light from the canvas in a very unusual way, and in a way that's very specific to the world we live in. There's nothing like that 100 years ago. So I was sort of interested in fluorescence for that reason, and spray paint. You put your finger on it and bang, there's stuff happening. It has a real kind of urgency of gesture, and there's a kind of aggressive feel to it that actually I just like, and it suits me, and it expresses one side of the energy that I'm working with.
So lastly, the title of the show, Battle of Faith and Doubt, is named after actually one of your paintings. So to finish up, can you tell us about the painting, The Battle of Faith and Doubt?
The big black painting that was made in January of 2012, it's called The Battle of Faith and Doubt. It felt like a real turning point. And, I was actually really having some doubt about carrying on making paintings. It felt like, it's always so hard to really believe in yourself, I think, whatever you're doing. And that painting is from a series of paintings that I was doing that were all black, and they kind of reflected my mood at the time. And I was working black on black, and just this idea that we're sort of constantly moving through the darkness, just trying to get to the next spot, and not really knowing where that is. And particularly as an abstract painter, I think that's something that we do. And gradually just these little lights started appearing, these lines and lights, and it was almost like the idea of the car headlights that only shine 20 feet in front of you, so you don't know how to go the whole way, but you know where to go next. And this idea of just having the sort of faith to go to the next point became very important to me. And I think actually that's in many ways where the Demiurge series came from.
Yeah, well, that the Battle of Faith and Doubt, the painting, that's definitely one of my favorites, and I'm glad you brought it up, because it also is it is kind of different from your other works, mostly because it's mostly black.
It is mostly black, and I went through a phase of making mostly black paintings, and it was partly because I'd been using a lot of fluorescence, and it was really beginning to affect my eyes. And
really,
yeah, I was actually getting a lot of headaches, and I was finding it quite difficult to see when I came out of the studio. So I got a CD about trying to help your own vision. And one of the exercises was this thing, palming, where you put your palms over your eyes, and then you picture yourself in the softest, most velvety black. And it's meant to be very healing for the sight. So I'd been doing that a lot, and then I just started finding that I really wanted to start using more black paint. It was actually very relaxing to be looking at black. So yeah, I went through a phase of making black paintings, and then right at the end of that, the Battle of Faith and Doubt, the little lights and the lines started coming out of the black.
Well, the exhibition is called The Battle of Faith and Doubt. It's opening on September 28th at Unspeakable Projects. Justine, thanks so much for talking with us about your work.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That's all for Art Uncovered this week. Thanks again to Justine Frischmann for coming on the show. Her solo exhibition, The Battle of Faith and Doubt, is opening on September 28th at Unspeakable Projects in San Francisco. You can see some of Justine's work on her website, justinefrischmann.net, and learn more about her exhibition at unspeakableprojects.com. Thanks for listening. I'm Thomas. This is Breakthrough Radio.